Once again, boxing family, I have another great request coming your way, and this request is from Brandon Lamb. I thank you, Brandon, for all your support, for all of your great comments, and I thank you always for participating in the channel. The fight that Brandon requested, it's a great middleweight matchup between two great middleweights. And those two middleweights are Bernard the Execution, Bernard the Alien, whatever you want to call him, Bernard Hopkins versus Carlos Monzon. I'm surprised I've never done this fight before, and I should have done this video a lot sooner. So Brandon, I really do thank you for your patience. So let's get into it. Both of these guys have tremendous advantages going into this fight. And to tell you the truth, this fight could really go either way, depending on who would implement their game plan, how they would implement their game plan, and how soon they would implement their game plans. Let's talk about Carlos Monzon for a second. This guy had an amazing jab. He had an amazing straight right hand. He had an amazing 1-2. And the guy could throw combinations like no one's business. And another thing I liked about Carlos Monzon is he could fight going forward as well as going backwards. If Carlos Monzon established that jab early on in the fight, Bernard Hopkins could have some difficulties, to tell you the truth. If he gets that jab established, if he makes Bernard go backwards, and if he's busy from the first bell going against Bernard Hopkins, Bernard could possibly have some difficulties. And Carlos Monzon had a great reach. So the jab, the straight rights, coupled with the reach, oh my goodness, Bernard would have a mountain to climb. But on the other hand, Bernard had a lot of tricks in the trick bag, and he had a lot of weapons in the arsenal. So whenever I do a video involving Bernard Hopkins, I'm gonna probably always say those two things. A lot of tricks in the trick bag and a lot of weapons in his arsenal. So Bernard, he's probably the master of ring generalship. Bernard is a thinking man in there. Bernard knows exactly what he's doing. Very slick, very cagey, knows when to fight dirty, how to fight dirty, by doing things like holding his opponents and hitting them on the side that the referee can't see. A lot of people frown on that, but to be honest with you, if you're getting away with it and you can pull it off, more power to you. At the end of the day, it's a fight. Bernard is great at roughhousing. He's great at getting physical with his opponents. And Carlos Monzon was a pretty physical fighter. But Bernard Hopkins, once he was on the inside, and Bernard was a great adjuster. He was a great adjuster. One of the negative things, which is few, but one of the negative things about Bernard Hopkins is sometimes he takes too long to get going. And if he's in there with a busy opponent, I always think about Joe Calzaghe and Jermaine Taylor. Bernard Hopkins likes to dictate the pace of his fights. And if he's able to dictate the pace, then that's an advantage for him. But Bernard always has difficulties when his opponents forces a more brisk pace than he wants to fight. And then you may see things like faking low blows. You may see him get dirtier with his tactics, with headbutts, things of that nature. Not slamming Bernard, but it is what it is. On honest analysis, it is what it is. So I just named a lot of factors between both of these fighters, which would make it an interesting fight. Point deductions are definitely a possibility, and unfortunately, disqualifications are definitely a possibility. It would just be a rough fight. A good fight, but a rough fight. We fans would definitely get our money's worth. who prevails in this fight. And I'm having difficulty because, as I said at the beginning of this video, it really could go either way. It really could go either way. I have trouble seeing Monzon defeating the Hopkins that defeated Tito Trinidad. I mean, Hopkins was on his game. He was sharp. But at the same time, Carlos Monzon was a real middleweight. So that could be the difference. Carlos Monzon was about business. He could fight going forward as well as going backwards, as I've already mentioned. Tito Trinidad wasn't necessarily good at backing up. Tito Trinidad was a come forward, seek and destroy. So when you have a fighter who can do both, a fight going forward and off the back foot, I mean, you have a tremendous fighter. You really have a tremendous fighter. So will the reach, the sharp shooting, great combination punching and pressure from Carlos Monzon prevail? Will that be the deciding factor? Or will the slickness, the caginess, the ring IQ, the ring generalship, the dirty tactics and the roughhouse tactics of Bernard Hopkins be the deciding factor? Who prevails? Who prevails? Who prevails? Now, the more I think about it, Bernard Hopkins is great at getting inside his opponent's heads. I mean, Carlos Monzon could possibly become frustrated by the tactics, and the tactics could be distracting for him, and that's what Bernard Hopkins counts on while using those tactics. I always say Bernard is probably the most intelligent fighter to ever step in the ring as far as fighting more with his head than his body. Bernard Hopkins is more economical with his punches. I think he's more accurate with his punches, although Monzon is pretty doggone accurate himself. Accurate, not active. So Bernard was more accurate, in my opinion. And Bernard only throws punches, it seems like, when he knows he can land them, which sometimes can backfire and cause him to be behind on points. And the fights with Jermaine Taylor was a prime example of that. In that first fight especially was a controversial decision for Jermaine Taylor. I didn't see the controversy. Bernard waited too long to fight. And he can't do that against Monzon, because Monzon was a punching machine. He was a punching machine. He was there to fight. He was going to put pressure on you, or he was going to make you come to him and punish you that way. Punish you going forward, punish you going backwards. So anyway, very hard fight to decide on, but I'm gonna go with my gut on this one. And I'm gonna give Bernard Hopkins a decision win in a rough fight. And those are my thoughts. Please let me know what you think. I'll see you next time.